They dragged a bulldozer across my front yard and left a $417 notice stapled to the mailbox like it was a parking ticket. That was the day my life narrowed to a pile of ripped native plants and a name on paper. Violation removed immediately. I still see the tracks at night, the metal teeth chewing through the berm I built to stop the spring under the ridge. If you ask how it got that bad, I'll tell you, it wasn't about a garden. It was about control. My name is Elliot Marsh. I moved to Brackenridge for a quieter life in a steep lot that needed work. I dug swales, built a low berm, planted native sedge and rush things that when they rooted, held the soil like a hand. The rain garden was stubborn and useful, and, to some, untidy. Willowcrest's board liked things neat. Identical mailboxes, matching flags, lawns cut the same height. Their president, Marina Voss, ran meetings with a smile that meant we decide. I tried to explain. I left plant labels with QR links to county reports. I offered to meet with neighbors. I did the neighborly things until neighborly things stopped working. The first violation letter read like a polite accusation. I walked it into the monthly meeting and told the room why the garden mattered. It soaked water, reduced runoff, and stabilized a loaded spring under the ridge. Marina stood at the lectern and said, flat as a blade, "Rules are rules." I remember the room pausing like someone holding their breath. I said, "This isn't aesthetics, it's engineering with plants." Anonymous complaints were filed about rocks and unauthorized landscaping. A surprise inspection produced a clipboard and a terse note. The HOA called a special vote with minimal notice, and then, within a week, landscapers with the HOA's preferred logo showed up and cleared the plot. I tried mediation, I wrote emails, I filed an architectural review, and each step felt like shouting into a long list of names that never answered. My neighbor Janet, a retired teacher, knocked on my door and said quietly, "They don't like change." That line stuck with me. It wasn't the plants they feared as much as anything different. Then the rain came. Without the garden, water ran faster down the slope. The flagstone steps tilted, a gutter pulled free, the soil under the porch sounded like a groan. I called Ana Reyes, a local geotechnical engineer I'd met at a community forum. Ana came with a probe and a straightforward way of saying uncomfortable things. That rain garden dispersed energy, she told me. It changed the path of water. It was preventing this exact series of failures. You can hear a scientist say a thing and feel it land. She explained how roots bind soil and how a berm stores stormwater long enough to slow it. And suddenly the patch of ugly plants looked less like decoration and more like infrastructure. The real turning point came at 2 in the morning when the retaining wall above Marina's property cracked like a distant gunshot. Her driveway bulged, azaleas tipped like dominoes, and for the first time she walked her yard like someone feeling the pulse under her skin. People called 911. Her insurance adjuster started asking about changes on the landscape. When a human action can be linked to a set of consequences, insurance moves from theory to list who moved earth, when, and why. We sued. The complaint named negligence, breach of fiduciary duty, and intentional property damage. Filing a suit is not dramatic in the way TV makes it seem. It is procedural and slow and full of forms. Depositions are long and strange. You watch people compress into smaller versions of themselves under oath. Testimony revealed a missed notice for the special vote authorizing removal and an invoice showing expedited service to remove hazardous landscaping. Small administrative errors become loud when someone reads the metadata. In court, Ana explained soil mechanics with maps and photos. She had a way of making roots sound heroic. The roots bind, the plants slow, the berm stores, she said, and the jury nodded the way people do when a story finally fits. My lawyer put Marina on the stand and asked, quiet and sharp, whether she had ever disclosed the contractor relationship. Marina's poised response, "I did what I thought was best for property values," rang thin next to text messages produced by the defense foreman. Board okayed removal, expedited. The foreman, eyes steady, admitted he'd been told to start work that morning. The weekday ordinariness of that exchange, texts and invoices and a phone call, was what turned an ugly small-town decision into a legal wrong. Courtrooms have real theater, a judge keeping order, a jury watching faces, a foreman whose hands tremble holding an inked invoice. When the verdict came back for the homeowners, Relief was both legal closure and a strange ache because winning publicly doesn't always heal private rifts. The damages covered repair, punitive fines, and a community fund for erosion mitigation. Some folks cheered, some looked down. Apologies were quiet and awkward. Rebuilding trust takes longer than rebuilding soil. Afterward, we rebuilt the garden, but smarter. We added terraces, deeper root systems, and a reinforced berm that looks subtle and acts like armor. We planted with a community crew volunteers who rolled up their sleeves and, for a hot day, stuck together in sweat and dirt. What made the whole thing wrong was secrecy and the absence of science in civic decisions. When rules are made behind closed doors and experts are ignored, policy becomes a blunt instrument. I learned to channel stubbornness into paperwork. Litigation isn't glamorous, it's receipts, timestamps, expert reports, and patience. Document everything: photos, emails, expert opinions. Try mediation first. Invite neighbors for a tour and demonstrate how something works. Sometimes the battle is won by a diagram and a cup of coffee, not a subpoena. But when power is exercised without process, when a decision affects foundations and lives, you need more than polite conversation. That quiet night, the one where you should be asleep and instead tally possibilities, convinced me this was worth fighting. When the bulldozer driver paused and I asked, "Who hired you to do this?" he shrugged. HOA said to remove hazardous landscaping. The answer was bureaucratic and simple, and that simplicity was what made it dangerous. This is not a perfect ending. Some friendships were lost. Some people still glance at my yard and see trouble. But the next heavy storm rolled through and the hill held. That's a kind of justice you can put your hand on. If you've got a story, a small victory, a legal mess, or a frankly absurd HOA letter, put it in the comments. Tell us what happened, what you would do next, and whether you think neighborhoods should prioritize aesthetics or resilience. Share what you learned or what you do differently. Let's talk about what community really means. Is it stewardship, or is it control?